of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There was no executive session this evening, and tonight we'd like to give a Citizens Award for resident Lydia Gemmer. Is she here? On November 3rd, 2012, a woman had just been bitten by her dog several times in front of 133 Runnymede Avenue. Lydia Gemmer witnessed the dog attack on her way to running errands and tried honking the horn to distract the dog, which did not work. She then got out of her car and physically pulled the dog off its owner by the collar. You did that? Got involved. The dog didn't bite you, right? No, okay. You're immune from dog bites, is that what it is? No. Mrs. Gemmer called 911 to report the incident. Officers responded to the scene, taking the dog to the Radnor Veterinarian Hospital. This certificate is in recognition of resident Lydia Gemmer for her heroic efforts in stopping a dog attack and saving a resident from more serious injuries. Thank you very much for getting involved. Thanks for getting involved, and we just ask Radnor residents just be a little careful about doing that. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. All right, we have finance and audit. We have a resolution authorizing the township manager to enter into local service. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Public participation. I'm sorry. I skipped that in the beginning. No public participation. I'll continue. Thank you. See, if you skip it, they don't dare come up after that. It's a process. We will also have public participation later on also if you think of something. Resolution 2012-149 authorizing the township manager to enter into local services tax collection agreement with Kratzenberg and Associates Incorporated at a cost of 1.75% of collection plus postage. And I would like to move the approval of the resolution. Do I have
Second.
Comment from the staff?
I just had a question for Bill. Do we know anything about this organization? It is a 3-year commitment. There is no, if I understood it correctly, no provisions for early termination if we find out they're heavy-handed or something to the folks that have to pay. So what gives you the confidence that we don't want to have an early termination provision?
Sure. Well, first of all, with regard to the early termination, we did include in the term under Article 1, it's on page 2. I won't read the exact language, but we specifically included language in there that would give either party an opportunity to cancel the contract based on a breach of what either side feels is the agreement we entered into. And it says the notice of termination shall specify the reason of termination. But basically it gives either party an opportunity to get out at any point during the 3-year term. We don't anticipate that being an issue, but there is that clause in there in case it comes up.
But it's only for a breach of the term of the agreement, not how they operate. So,
well, which includes the administration and collection of the tax. So if there's anything along those lines that we feel is a material departure from what we're looking for, we have the opportunity. Then how we ended up with this firm is Act 32, Pennsylvania Act 32, for municipalities to have their earned income tax. The entire state went through with all the counties and did an RFP process, and by each county selected a tax collector for the earned income tax. For Delaware County, it's this firm, the Keystone Collections firm. So we piggybacked off of the work that they did to select this firm.
Well, Kevin's point, I think, is worth talking a little further. This is an agreement with not a law firm or accounting firm. It's an agreement with a collection agency. and they will in turn retain counsel. And in a certain sense, it is similar to an agreement with a law firm, where the owner or the person paying the bill, that's us, is free to terminate the services of the firm at any time. There's no commitment on the part of the owner to keep the organization employed for the fixed term. That's the nature of an agreement with accounting firms and law firms. And it seems to me that ought to be the approach that we take here, because as Kevin says, we may not be able to prove a breach of contract, a default in obligations, but we may be unhappy with their performance for other reasons. So it might be worth our while to add a clause that allows termination for convenience on the part of the township. And they have no investment here. It's not as if we're committing to buy all of their goods for 3 years, and so they then allocate a portion of their factory output to us, and if we terminate them, then they have unabsorbed overhead and lost profit. That's not the case here. This is basically a time and materials contract, so there's no investment.
Could
All
we
right,
get some
well,
feedback on that from staff?
Well, we could, the sense of the board, Bill, you can give to the manager. He has to execute the contract, so he can change the terms of the contract upon execution, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the contract that's attached to the legislation is, I mean, that could be modified prior to being adopted.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily convinced that, or that we've got that big of an issue here.
Yeah.
We've
I'm trying to make it smaller.
We've met with the firm on several occasions. There's the opportunity, sure. We're asking someone else to help us out administering the collection of the tax. So there could be issues. There's the clause in the agreement that would allow us to get out. But we can go back and certainly ask them if they'd be willing to
Is this their
include a clause.
form agreement, Bill?
It's their form
Their
agreement,
standard
but
agreement.
that entire paragraph B under term was added by us and agreed to by them. That was not included in the original draft that came when we first started meeting with them.
Well, my feeling is we ought to have a termination for convenience clause, but
How the other commissioners feel?
I think it's worthwhile asking.
I don't think you'd get too much pushback on it either from the firm. I mean, I think it would be a no.
Any
We can approve this, and then Bob can work on it.
Yeah, just make the approval subject to including that clause in the agreement.
Any public comment? All right, can I have a motion then approving the contract with that inclusion? Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Public Works and Engineering?
We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is the appointment of a new township engineer. There's and this would be Resolution 2012-150. The resolution that has been prepared by Public Works and Engineering would appoint Gannett Fleming at the price or the fee of $45,000 per year on a retainer basis, and then in addition name three individuals to positions of township engineer: a traffic engineer from the Gilmore and Associates firm, which has served us for the last year or so, and then a stormwater engineer from the Chagrin Valley Engineers firm. I talked with our Director of Public Works before the meeting about the wording of the resolution. I found it a little bit confusing that we're appointing Gannett for a price of $45,000, but then apparently we're also appointing two individuals and not their companies, and we're not specifying a price or a fee for those two other individuals. So it was my thinking, and Steve, you can chime in here, it was my thinking that we ought to be appointing the corporation or the partnership or the limited liability company we shouldn't be appointing individuals. And then we can specify that once the appointment of those corporations or LLCs is made, that we expect the persons named here, Amy Kaminsky of Gilmore, and Michael Henry of Chagrin, and Roger Phillips of Gannett Fleming, to be the assigned individuals.
Commissioner, I think you're right. I think we really need to do both. Through the RFP process, we came not to just specific companies, but to specific individuals within those companies. So the only award for a fee would be Gannett Fleming to provide the retainer services. As far as awarding, as far as a township engineer, again, it could be the firm Gannett Fleming, but I'm respectfully requesting that it be Roger Phillips, specifically so named, because we didn't, through the RFP process, there wasn't another individual from Gannett Fleming. It was that specific individual. The same thing, Gilmore and Associates, it's slightly different. There is no retainer fee. There will only be fees paid to Gilmore for Amy Kaminsky's traffic engineering services based on subdivision and land development reviews or a capital project or specific engineering quoted to the township. And Michael Henry of Chagrin Valley Engineers, it's a very similar situation. There is no fee paid to Chagrin Valley Engineers and or Michael Henry's firm unless it is for a specific project.
But the point being is they're not independent contractors. They're operating on their own. They're working for the company. We're not going to pay them direct. We're going to pay their company. So solicitor, we can just appoint the companies and these individuals at the same time, or how should we do this?
Yes, actually, you should appoint the individual as a member or an employee of the company, because your Home Rule Charter 6.07 says the engineer shall be a professional, the township engineer shall be a professional civil engineer registered in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So your appointment actually is of an individual engineer within a, who works for a company.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think this reads, the way this is written is sufficient to satisfy that requirement.
But if we have a problem, a malpractice issue with the work that the individual has done, and we've appointed him or her and not the company, then we have a contract with that individual and not with the company.
Well, you're appointing him or her as an individual or as an employee of the company, of the engineering firm.
So we're employing the company and the person at the same time.
Correct.
And you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in the whereas clause, Steve, you refer to the fact that we're awarding contracts. And then
Contract engineering services.
In the operative clause, you're not awarding contracts. You're just awarding one contract to Gannett Fleming.
Correct, for the retainer, contract engineering services. But we are also accepting the fee schedule of the other two firms, and those hourly rates are what will be billed for Amy Kaminsky and Michael Henry for any work they do, whether it be a subdivision land development ordinance or based on a proposal. I can change, I can make any notations to this that you wish, Commissioner.
Well, this is just the appointment. This is not the contracts, right? We'll separately
correct.
approve the contracts.
There's going to be a professional services agreement
Right.
that'll go to the township manager for signature, which will execute this agreement.
So, Steve, I'm not even, I don't understand why we would need to appoint the representative of Gilmore or the representative of Chagrin. My sense is what we just need to do is use this, appoint Roger as the representative of Gannett Fleming, and then when those other services come to us, then we contract with those other two firms.
Well, we want.
I mean, I have similar concerns to what Jim had, and my sense is the way to resolve it is just simply to make the appointment.
But we want, based on our experience and our preference, we want those two people to do the work.
But that's what they're going to present to us then, when the time comes.
But they've provided a pricing proposal that we want to accept and then
Correct.
utilize on a project-by-project basis.
But we're not accepting it. We're not doing that with this document tonight, at least I don't see that we're
Well,
doing
you
it.
would, sans Gannett Fleming and the township engineer, the request was for two specific people, and part of that professional services agreement will be the company's fee schedule for work performed. And the thought was it's for a 2-year period, and in this way, would be official that Gilmore and Associates, Amy Kaminsky, is our traffic engineer. So when a Saldo project comes in, there is no mistake. There's no questioning of the professional services. I know we have the option to use different firms for professional services without sealed bid. We did go through a process, and I just thought this was a very clean way of having these specific engineering firms on board with the township. Do we have a cancellation agreement? We can cancel that agreement within 60 days written notice. I was just trying to make it clean and transparent for why these specific people are here.
And the two individuals that are doing this work on a needed basis, most of their fees will go back to the person requesting the saldo change.
Except for Chagrin Valley, most of their fees will be based on capital projects, design and/or permitting approved by this board for the township.
Okay.
Steve, is Roger Phillips going to be our primary engineer?
Roger Phillips, who's in the audience, he will
Okay.
be in attendance at these meetings and planning commissions and any other meetings that the board should wish. As with most of the people we interviewed, there would be a different person at one point, a staff engineer here for the retainer for the 2 half-days per week.
So somebody will have office hours, but it won't be this.
Correct. It could be. Roger will actually start out being that, but there will be a different person.
Okay.
With the chair's permission, I'd like to propose a small modification.
Okay.
Steve, in the operative clause, the resolve, now therefore, in the third line after 2013 and 2014, we would put a period. Then we would take out the words "and institute." And we would insert "in addition," and continue on the following personnel, and take out "as noted," and put in "are appointed." So I'll read it back. I'll start in line 2. Does hereby award the engineering services retainer contract to Gannett Fleming in the amount of $45,000 per year for the years 2013 and 2014, period. In addition, the following personnel are appointed: Roger Phillips, Amy Kaminsky, and Michael Henry.
Very good.
I'll make those changes
Okay,
before
thank you.
Commissioner
That
Spengler
would
signs it.
help.
All right, so you want to make that motion approved with those changes?
I would like to make that motion as I read it.
Second?
Second.
Solicitor have any problem with these changes? No. Okay.
No.
Any other commissioner comment? Public comment? You must come to the mic and give your name and your address. Just pull that up.
Garland,
Pull that
608
up.
Brookside.
Pull that up in front of you so they can hear you at home.
Martin Garland, 608 Brookside Avenue.
Welcome.
I guess, Mike, I've been through this type of thing before. You're tying people associated with a company, but you've got no control whether those people will keep on working for that company. So we've been through this before. I've been through this before. So if you link them, but you've got no control over their employment, they could leave, and then your linkage is broken. So
Yeah, and then we would have to find another traffic engineer with that company that we're satisfied with, or another company.
okay, all right.
Okay, thanks.
But I would like to say thank you to Steve. I know you and your staff did a lot of interviewing and evaluation of resumes. It's nice to know that we have a real specialist in stormwater management, stormwater engineering in Michael Henry. And I don't know Amy Kaminsky, but I'm sure she's here. Oh,
Sake of the
hi.
board, this is Amy Kaminsky.
Okay.
Amy, if you want to stand up for a sec.
Okay.
And that's Roger Phillips in the back
Okay,
from Gannett.
Good. And is Michael Henry here?
Michael Henry is not here.
He's in Ohio, so
That is
that's
correct.
understandable. But it's good that we have these real specialists because we need them. And again, thanks for doing good work.
Just to pile on there, this is an important position in this township because our engineer, or whoever we're using it as an engineer, is really our primary line of offense, defense, for everything that comes into this township. All of the plans and the development and anything that's done to any of our natural resources, to open lots, to redevelopment, that comes through our engineer, and our engineer is the one assessing whether it bodes well within our codes. So it's a really important position, and it's worth the time and energy that we've put into selecting a good match.
So we have a motion and second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. Don, Community Development?
Yes, so it's a consideration for them to move the request for Villanova's zoning amendment. So, Bill, do you envision a presentation, or do you just want a motion?
Commissioners, I can kind of address some of this. Villanova representatives are here for a brief presentation. Back in May, Villanova had submitted a petition to amend the zoning ordinance to allow for a new use. They met with you and heard some feedback from the commissioners, from staff, from the residents, and took that time since May to make some revisions to their petition, which is what's in front of you tonight. Prior to voting on that, I think you can allow them an opportunity to explain where the changes have come in that petition and in the draft language from the ordinance, and then staff would recommend, if you're comfortable and it's at your leisure and at your discretion with the changes, and you feel that this is ready for some input and review of the County Planning Commission, the Township Planning Commission, the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, if you're comfortable with the changes, that you would forward it to them for their review. That would be all that you're authorizing tonight, is just to move this along in the process at no obligation. At no point in time are you obligated to adopt this, but get their feedback from it at this point in time.
Very good. So let's hear from Villanova.
Before we start, I'd just like to state that I have recused myself and will continue to recuse myself on this matter. My husband sells a small amount of equipment to Villanova University, and hence I have a conflict. So I will not participate in discussion or voting on this matter.
Evening. Nicholas Cornelia representing Villanova University on this matter. I have present here this evening Chris Kowalski, Assistant to the President at Villanova, as well as Bob Morrow, who's the VP in charge of facilities for Villanova University. As Mr. Kachansky has explained, we met with you in June based on an amendment that we proposed in May. Since that time, we've made some major revisions both to the ordinance itself and to the plan, and we'd like to share that with you this evening. And also would like for the board to refer this matter to the Planning Commission, Delaware County Planning Commission, Radnor Planning Commission, as well as the Implementation Committee for their feedback to this board eventually. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Nick. Chris Kowalski with Villanova University. Thank you very much for this opportunity tonight. I want to first go through a brief presentation, and then, as Nick said, Bob and I are here. Nick, happy to answer any questions you may have. So quickly, our presentation will include just a review of the project itself and the process to date. We'll go through some ordinance modifications, specifically with regard to setback and height, a proposed pedestrian crossing, and a proposed distribution of parking. Just to reset the project itself, it's been a while since we've shared the description of what it is that we propose. We're looking to create residential housing for approximately, specifically 1,159 upper-class students. These would be apartment-style residence halls, and they would be primarily for seniors with some space for juniors. In addition, there would be limited Villanova-operated student-centric retail, approximately 20,000 square feet, including a relocated university bookstore, a bistro, and a convenience store. There would also be a performing arts center, and in the original proposal, there was a parking structure proposed to accommodate approximately 1,800 vehicles. This is an illustration of the site for where all this was proposed. Right here is Lancaster Avenue going down this way, and these, where these grade buildings are our current main parking lots. And the large main parking lot, the west main parking lot, this is where we propose the residence halls, and on the ground floor would be the retail that I was speaking of. Back here on the east main lot, in the back, closer to the train tracks, would be the proposed parking structure, and in front, right here, would be the Performing Arts Center. As Kevin mentioned, we were before you in June. We had originally submitted in May, but it's been approximately a year now since this process began. In December of last year, we held neighbor meetings to reveal our plans to neighbors and residents. We made an initial presentation before this body in February where we outlined the plan. We came back in June and received some feedback where we were asked to provide more specific information and work more closely with the township staff and the residents to come up with some answers to questions and concerns that had been raised. We took the time to do that through a series of meetings, both with the township staff, one in June and another one in October, and with neighbors in July and November. And we're here before you again tonight. Based upon the feedback, we've made a number of significant changes to our plans, and they focus on the following areas. Sorry, this chart, the text might be a little small to read, but I'll go through some of it. In the language for the ordinance, we've made a lot of modifications to setback and height language. We heard this specifically from both staff, commissioners, and the residents. As you can see in the initial submission, the language was very vague, and we've gone back through and added some specificity in the current submission that you have in your packets this evening. With regard to setback, you can see that some specific numbers have been inserted and are also what we've done is we've provided some information about the setback from the curb. In the submission language, the numbers are from the right-of-way, but we've also calculated how far away the various structures would be from the curb. With regard to height, we've made some significant changes. Whereas in the initial submission, the maximum height was listed as 65 feet. We've taken that down to 55 feet and 5 stories. Whereas we did not have an average height, at the suggestion of staff specifically, we've come up with an average height of all the buildings of 45 feet. The parking structure, which will be reduced in capacity and size, I'll go into that in a little more detail in a bit, but it went from 65 feet tall to 38 feet. And the Performing Arts Center has gone from 65 feet to 60 feet. And the average of all buildings is 50 feet.
Chris, to get that 50 feet, are you just simply taking the height of the buildings and dividing it by the number of buildings?
Nick might have a little bit more information about how that was calculated.
We use the township method. They take average grade. For each building, they take average grade of height, and then we took each building height based on that and then divided it by the number of buildings. I believe that would be accurate, right, Bob? Okay. And we're talking about the dormitory buildings and the parking structure and Performing Arts Center. It's not like we have a 2-foot building that we're calculating in there. They're all the regular buildings.
One of the big changes, one of the big pieces of feedback that we heard from this body and from everyone is a desire for some way for the pedestrians to cross Lancaster Avenue. And we went through and we carefully considered that. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to be sure that we were not putting a pedestrian crossing, whether it be a tunnel or a bridge, in the plan just for the sake of putting it in. We wanted to make sure that it would be used, that it would be effective, and that it would be efficient. And we considered a lot of different locations. The buildings on this slide that are shaded in blue, these are our classroom buildings on campus. You can see that while our business school right here, our nursing school right here, and Vasey Hall are on sort of the eastern end of campus, a majority of our classroom and laboratory space is on the western end of campus. So that played a significant role in our decision to ultimately propose a crossing here at the Church Walk. We also considered Ithan and Lancaster. We know that that is an area of great concern. It has a lot of pedestrian traffic right now. It offers a path of least resistance now for the students that park in this area, and our students on South Campus. As you know, there's a pedestrian four-way stop, pedestrian scramble, 26-second long, where the entire intersection can be used as a crosswalk and moves a great amount of people, especially in peak times. A crossing here, we felt, would not be effective because no one bridge or no one tunnel or even two would capture all of the pedestrian traffic that's coming through that intersection and going in many different directions. We also looked...
What's the backup for that statement?
Well, we looked primarily at a bridge. Initially, we had gone back to plans that we had for a tunnel from a previous project in the early 90s. And the tunnel approach would come in this front lawn, if you will. For ADA accessibility issues, the approach would have to be very long. It would take up a great deal of space here, and it would come up back here. And tunnels, we know, are perceived as less safe. No matter how well you light it, no matter how often you patrol it, it's perceived just not to be safe and does not get as much use. We know that with access points farther away from the intersection, it wouldn't necessarily capture a lot of use for that reason as well. For pedestrian overpass, we know that we would more than likely not be able to eliminate the at-grade crossing. And with elevators or staircases involved in putting a bridge across Ithan Avenue, or excuse me, across Lancaster Avenue on either side, we know that the students probably would not, like water, they would choose the path of least resistance, and that would be to stay at grade. We don't really have the topography or the buildings to connect two buildings. And in addition, say if we connected it to this residence hall to Bartley Hall, this is not a large enough destination for all of these students who would be in this area. It wouldn't necessarily draw a lot of traffic. So that was one of the challenges we faced.
Well, the students that the public sees today going across that intersection, I assume they live in the dormitories on your south campus.
Some of them do, but a lot of the traffic that comes from across that intersection is parking in these parking lots. So it's resident students in addition to commuter students.
I see. Okay, keep going.
Okay. We also looked at mid-block, right here in the middle of the development, and perhaps coming out in front of Doherty Hall. But again, while it might capture some students who were in the proposed new residence halls, we didn't feel like it would capture a lot of students who were living on South Campus. For them, they may not come under the bridge and come into the development and cross here. And again, the where it puts them out is not necessarily desirable as far as where they want to be. In addition to that, we use these front lawns fairly regularly. A lot of intramural activity, a lot of recreational programming that goes on there. We use it for Special Olympics, other events like that. Any sort of construction on that field would inhibit our ability to continue to do that. So we moved down to this area at the church, and it became an intriguing option. Again, because of the destinations that we've outlined here, we thought that it could really work to attract a significant amount of pedestrian traffic, both from the residence halls that we're proposing, but also from the majority of freshmen who live down here on South Campus. There is a path that's not, oh yeah, it is right here. It's illustrated right here. It's actually used fairly well today. Freshman students who are coming to class on this side of campus make use of going through the Aldwin Triangle, crossing the SEPTA R100 tracks, and coming across this intersection. Now, the challenge with this intersection right now is that unlike the intersection at Ithan and Lancaster, there's not a lot of space to queue for pedestrians. So it can build up pretty quickly. In addition, there's not a pedestrian scramble phase there. There is a green light that will allow traffic to turn out of that driveway that pedestrians have to share. So the crossing is not the same sort of quality of pedestrian crossing as there is at Ithan and Lancaster right now. So we actually think we can improve the crossing experience there with a bridge. So this is an initial concept of what we think a crossing at the church could look like. This is very early on when we first came up with the idea, and as you'll see in the next couple of slides, the plans have evolved even from this. But you can see that it would connect with the church to adjacent to the new residence halls. 4 lanes of traffic of Lancaster Avenue would go underneath. There'd be a spot for a sidewalk right here, and then I'll show you more details back here about how a driveway would also go through and how it would connect with the SEPTA R100 tracks and the bridge over them. It is designed, it will be designed to be complementary to the stone that marks the church and the stone that we intend to use to mirror the collegiate Gothic style in the new residence halls for the rest of the campus. This is an elevation of what it would look like. The crossing itself would be 475 feet, which is very long, but we think that to do it right requires a bridge of that length. As you can see over here, students would have to go up, as they already do, one side of the bridge that goes over the R100 tracks, but then they would stay elevated for the entire walk onto campus. It would end here at the church in a new, larger plaza. For those of you who are familiar with the area in front of the church right now, there is a driveway there, and it's pretty much a driveway. There's not much room on either side. We're going to expand that, eliminate the steps that go down into the walkway that would lead you back down to Lancaster, and instead make that sort of a little bit of a gathering area, provide a little bit more of an area to queue, again, for those who are using the crossing.
Chris, excuse me, all the way to the right, you're showing a bridge.
Right
That's
here.
new construction over SEPTA 100, Route 100?
It would connect with the existing bridge that's there. Our construction would end roughly right here. If I'm, keep pressing that button, sorry. It would connect with the current existing
Is
bridge.
it the current bridge over Ithan Avenue? Is that the?
No, this is the R100 tracks right here. Ithan Avenue is farther down.
Okay. I wasn't aware of a bridge. I take that
There's a pedestrian bridge that crosses. yeah.
100 a lot, and I was never aware there was a bridge there. Okay.
There's a little parking lot right there.
So yeah, there's a parking lot on this
Yeah,
side, and
that's
there are parking lots over here. So there would be a driveway that would allow crossing through the parking that we have proposed behind the new residence halls right here. We still have a lot of design work to do on this. This is, while we've planned a lot of it, we still have some work to do, but we know that there will be multiple access points, which I can illustrate a little bit better on the next slide. I'll go to that right now, actually. So this is an overhead view. Again, I know we keep shifting perspectives, but right here is Lancaster Avenue. Here is the church, and here is the elongated, enlarged area in front of the church. So the bridge would come and continue over Lancaster Avenue and cross over here. You can see that the intersection with Church Drive would be maintained, but it would be altered slightly. We've talked to staff and PennDOT about this intersection, and initially there was some thought about doing away with it entirely, but we actually think there's a way to keep it, and that we actually can make good use of it. What we have here is we would have signals on either side of the bridge, so that the bridge would not impede visibility of the traffic signals. This would be your one-way drive in, and there would be 2 lanes out. And right now we're envisioning that both lanes could turn left. This lane could also turn right. In this concept right here, we have 2 staircases up to the crossing, right here and right here, sort of on either end of the residence hall. We've also worked in a underpass through this particular residence hall building to allow the pedestrian traffic that we hope from the students who live in this area walking through the courtyards, they'll be able to walk through and right up to the steps here. Back here, we still have to determine whether or not there will be an elevator or a ramp, but right now we've envisioned an elevator on here, on this side, and another staircase here. So that is our concept for a pedestrian crossing. And I'm happy to take questions on that, but I also want to show how our plan for distributing parking will work with this. And it might answer some of your questions, Commissioner Higgins, about that intersection. So one of the other major items that we heard was about parking, both with the parking structure that we had originally proposed to handle roughly 1,800 cars, as well as the distribution of parking as it exists currently on campus, how we're using it, how we can use it better. And so we took that to heart and came up with what we think is an effective plan. First and foremost, we've reduced the capacity of the big parking structure in our proposal by 1/3. It'll come down from 1,800 cars to just over 1,200, 1,230 cars. It'll go from 6 levels of parking to 4 levels, with 1 level underground. And it will rise no more than 38 feet, which will conform with existing height requirements. We plan to add a level to the 2 garages that we have on main campus. This garage right here is right near the main entrance to campus. This is behind what is our health services building and Driscoll Hall, our nursing building. Right now it's 2 levels. We plan to make it 3. This would add 69 spots. Right here is our parking structure adjacent to the St. Augustine Center and across from the Connolly Center. It's 2 levels right now. We would plan to add a third, and that would be an extra 124 spots. And we think that with the addition of parking in those 2 areas, that we can get all those who work on main campus, our faculty and our staff, to park on main campus. Right now, there are a decent number of them, who park in the main parking lots. So they contribute to the stress of this intersection at Lancaster and Ithan Avenue. We think by bringing them onto campus, we'll reduce that stress and get them closer to their offices, which will also make them happier. In addition, we propose surface parking here. This would be a new lot. It is along the SEPTA R100 tracks and behind the current old homes that we use for administrative offices. Those administrative offices would remain. We need that space. We use that space, and we will keep that space. We would maintain the parking that exists already there and add 246 spots. We plan to use this parking for our remaining commuting students, those students who we would not be able to provide housing for through this project. One of the benefits of putting parking here and working on this area, this would be a single level parking, by the way, and we would maintain a buffer between the parking lot and the R100 tracks. One of the things that we work with township staff on, they've expressed an interest in, is right now there's 6 or 7 driveways that go into these various buildings. We would be able to eliminate, I believe, all but one of them. We envision a right turn in and a right turn out only off of Lancaster Avenue. So if you're heading east, you would be able to turn in right, and if you're coming out, you would be able to continue east. All other traffic would come in at the light at Church Drive.
Where is the church in that
The
slide?
church is right here. So the pedestrian bridge would be right here. And these parking lots would connect. So the traffic could come in off of Lancaster Avenue here. Could also come in off of Ithan Avenue and come through here.
And that green area, that's new parking, but it's...
These 2 garages already exist as parking structures, and we would add to them. This is the new parking structure.
No, the long, elongated one down there.
This would be new
You have
parking.
administrative buildings in front of that, don't you?
Correct, yes.
Where are they?
They're outlined here, 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 here,
Okay,
and here.
I see.
And they would remain. We have spoken to the parish about this plan, and while it hasn't formally been presented to them, there has been very positive reaction from the people we have heard from to both, mostly the pedestrian crossing. I think there is a desire for safer crossings for families, for church services. There'd still be parking maintained in that lot for church and church events, but they would be able to use a pedestrian crossing and cross the road very safely. So I want to illustrate how we think this can all work together. Again, the buildings outlined in blue are our academic buildings. The green are the parking structures that I was talking about, and the yellow is the surface parking that we propose. So again, one of the reasons why we think this location for the pedestrian crossing will work really well is that it will draw people who are parking, commuting students, daily commuters, in this yellow lot. This will be their way onto main campus. For at least half or more of the students who are living in these residence halls that we're proposing, this would be their way to walk onto main campus. And for a lot of students who live on our south campus, this would be their way onto main campus. I don't think it'll eliminate crossing at Ithan and Lancaster. I'm not saying that it will, but I think that we can significantly reduce the amount of both vehicular traffic that uses that intersection as well as pedestrian traffic. One of the other things that we've been asked to consider is event parking. And the planning for that is still ongoing. That is something that we want to have more time with, and we've gotten a lot of input from the township and the police. They have some great ideas. We think we can better use our parking. We know that we have surplus parking for events, and we have to find a better way to use it. We think with the creation of these parking spots on main campus and this new parking structure right here, that we can manage, say, our season ticket holders in for basketball games and assign them parking, perhaps on a rotating basis, to one of these lots, drawing them perhaps in a different traffic routing system away from this intersection to park, at least in these two garages, to park here. And we think that a similar system can be put in place for other events. So that's part of our planning as we move forward as well, is finding a better way to use the parking that we know we have on campus, the available spaces that we have, better wayfinding to take some of the stress that events place on this intersection right here. This parking structure, the one that we proposed, the one that's now 1,200 versus 1,800, it would serve as parking for the students who live here. They live here instead of commute at this, if these dorms were built. We know that they'll use their car to use local businesses, go to Giant, get their groceries, but they will not be using them at the peak times that they're using them now. So that too will reduce stress on the intersection of Ithan and Lancaster. Any questions on what we said? I do, before I go, I got ahead of myself, I do want to thank the staff. The staff has been incredibly helpful. They've provided some very good guidance and some very good suggestions, and have really helped us approach this in a way that we think we've come up with some creative solutions to the challenges that we know we've heard.
Is there any parking around the, there was like 300 spots around the dorms. Is there any parking there at all now?
Yeah, there is. There is surface parking behind. I believe it's 182 spots. And what we've also done is eliminated the on-street parking. Early on, we had some parking proposed along Lancaster Avenue, a small in and out lot right here, and then some spaces here. The thinking was that that would help potentially control speed along that stretch, but the police were thinking that it might have the opposite effect, so we were happy to eliminate those spots. That will allow us to do different things with a buffer in front of the buildings too, whereas if there was parking along the street, we would not be able to necessarily put a continuous fence, but we're able to do that now. So we can make that a little bit of a safer buffer zone.
Commissioner, questions? Public, have any questions?
Hello, I'm Jim Schneller. I live in Radnor Township. I've spoken before on this issue. I asked the committee, I'm sorry, the board to table this matter. I think I don't speak for a minority when I say that the project seems to have a bit of forward momentum that the citizens have their hands up in the air about. We know that government has to proceed and things have to be transparently digested, but apparently the firm hired to present this and to keep the wheels going is tremendously biased in favor of the university. And just to be concise, I think that the board might want to table this until you see a 10-year plan from the university. They might table it because you need a firm agreement about off-campus. We see a wonderful figure of 5,000 plus or 1,500 plus students. But I think everybody at Radnor knows better than this is an effort to remove students from the community, at least not for very long. And our roads can't take this. Would you kindly take the initiative? We urge this. I've seen many people urge this at the Planning Commission. However, our citizen urging is no match for what's happening. So another request I'd make is that in your bidding process or in your RFP process, these people who are going to come in and, quote, make a study and be a balanced factor should show expertise in listening to the citizens. This current firm, I apologize if I'm strong language, but this current firm is just openly walking along 10 feet from the university. And the implications here are so negative, and the citizens are so disappointed that I wanted to say that everything you can possibly do, including table this for some very basic studies, would help our goals and the township goals. And this is a very traffic-oriented proposal. That's what it's all about. And I just wanted to reiterate that when you have square footage, that means cars. So if you're talking about a future policy of 30-foot setbacks on Lancaster Pike, please keep in mind what you're setting as a policy for all 8 street fronts of Villanova University, on Ithan, on County Line, even on Alden. And give us a break. If student housing could be reduced, there are certain enclaves that would be very happy, and justifiably so. So I don't think that is an untoward objective for Garrett Hill especially. And finally, I understand that the Commons is the university's probably future position spot for so many events, but I'd like to ask you that policy that would put no setback virtually might be kept in mind, because the north side of Lancaster Pike also stands to be built on. And we now see the south side all the way down to the small shopping center and across the street is clearly being set up for development. Thank you. Can you do anything?
Thank you.
Tonight's a night to table it.
Is there any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Patty Barker. I'm chair of the Garrett Hill Coalition. I live at 920 Lewis Lane in Rosemont. I appreciate that Villanova University listened to neighbors' comments and made changes to their development plans accordingly, specifically reducing the height of the parking structure to conform to Radnor Township zoning regulations and adding a pedestrian bridge at Church Walk to help with pedestrian safety issues. The university is definitely taking steps in the right direction, and the community thanks them for that. That being said, I have some comments, concerns, and recommendations for the board to consider with regard to what Villanova is proposing this evening and for moving forward. Number one, the Planning Commission is in the middle of revising the planned institutional district zoning requirements. They are meeting 2 to 3 times per month during this revision process. I'm concerned that planning will be overburdened and unable to give Villanova's plan their full and careful attention that a project of this scope deserves. I'm also concerned that the cart is being put before the horse. If you do decide to pass Villanova's plan onto planning this evening, please do so with the express statement, take this up after you have finished the planned institutional revisions. I plead to the board, and I respectfully recommend that the board allow planning to finish the planned institutional district revisions before addressing Villanova's plan. Number two, the CICD, the Comprehensive Integrated College Plan that Villanova is proposing, sets a precedent, some might say dangerous or short-sighted, for other institutions in Radnor Township, and there are many, to ask for the same type of relief from Radnor Township zoning regulations. This new section 280.68.1 deserves a careful, reasoned review. Are Villanova's zoning requests detrimental in the larger context? It would seem so. Again, it's clear the responsible action for the board is to allow planning to finish the planned institutional district revisions before addressing Villanova's plans. Number three, during the Villanova neighbor meetings and the Villanova Radnor Township staff meetings, Villanova was asked, and I believe they agreed, to do a larger traffic study that would include approximately 13 to 15 intersections that would be impacted by Villanova's plan. Traffic will be explosive if this plan goes through. There will be a huge impact in and around the high school on King of Prussia Road and Radnor Chester Road. To date, I don't believe that traffic study has been done. As an important decision-making planning tool, I respectfully recommend that the board require Villanova to complete this traffic study before the plan is passed along to our Planning Commission. Number four, the pedestrian bridge that is proposed is laudable. However, at the November 5th Villanova neighbors meeting, Villanova could give no time frame as to when the bridge would be constructed. I respectfully recommend that the board require Villanova to specify a timeline for all construction. Additionally, I respectfully recommend that the board require Villanova to construct the pedestrian bridge at the onset of the project to ensure that it will actually get built. unlike the pedestrian tunnel that was planned in 1994 through 96 as a joint project of PennDOT and Villanova University. I respectfully request that the board carefully consider the magnitude of these shortcomings and send Villanova back to the drawing board to further revise their development plan. The plan is genuinely flawed and premature. If the township passes this zoning amendment, Villanova will be able to build their plan by right. The township and its residents will lose all their rights. I urge Villanova to continue their open dialogue with Radnor Township staff and residents. I look forward to a continued collaborative process. It's our collective obligation to ensure that the plan will benefit Villanova and its surrounding communities. I thank you for listening, and I thank you for your service to the citizens of Radnor Township.
I'm Sarah Pilling from 29 Garrett, and I'm reading a statement written by Roberta Winters. She wanted to speak at public comment at the beginning of the meeting, but it didn't happen right away, so she had to go to a church meeting. She's asked me to read this. Decisions regarding development must be looked at systematically and not parochially. Land use impacts congestion, traffic, air quality, stormwater, and sewage requirements. These consequences are not site-specific but cumulative. They do not regard township boundaries, wards, or precinct delineations. What may be good for the goose may not be good for the gander. I, Roberta Winters, urge you to revise the development plans that Villanova is presenting to reflect the wider impact of the current proposal as presented this evening. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Anna Marie Hessman, Radnor resident and Rosemont neighbor of Villanova. I really enjoyed some of the changes they've made to the plan, and I wanted to compliment some of the things I saw tonight. There's a lot of thought that's gone into this. And I thought it was interesting when they came up with the slide with the deltas between the original plan and the current plan. I'd love to see something like that with a column for what would be allowable under the current law. And why can't Villanova live within the current laws? That would be an excellent thing to hear clearly laid out, because I don't understand why we need to redo a zoning district just for Villanova. Villanova is in the middle of a community, and our community needs to be better planned, not just Villanova as a cutout chunk in the middle of it. And I think that ethic is continually missing from the plan, and I'd like to hear it in the future. And I ask you not to send it off to the planning community unless there is a plan that the community needs redone, really. There are some improvements to the parking. I still think today, with the events we have going on and the facilities that exist, the congestion and the pedestrian traffic and the constant hustle and bustle at that North Ithan, sorry, is it out there? At the Ithan intersection. It's a problem, and it's not addressed at all here. It's not more welcoming for pedestrians than what you've drawn. It's still a very narrow strip of Lancaster Avenue for people to walk along that's high next to kind of a bowl. And the water enters into that in all kinds of ways that I can't possibly express today. But I also, did the numbers come up today for current parking spaces versus planned parking spaces? I heard the distribution that I thought was actually kind of an improvement with increasing some of the on-campus sizes. Did we hear numbers for that? Is there an increase in total number of parking spaces in their new plan?
Well,
did we not hear that number?
We don't have answers to everything. You're here to comment.
Okay, I'm sorry. It says questions and answers.
You mean taking into, Anne Marie, you mean taking into account?
So anyway, I think my concern with the parking, I'd like to see the numbers, but I think we still have a problem with a lot more going on than we have parking for. And I'd like to see that really substantively addressed. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Philip R., who's chair of the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee, vice chair, couldn't be here, so he asked me to read his comments. Number one, proposed zoning changes are essentially the same as the one previously turned back. The setbacks are simply the ones already in their plans, 30 feet front setback versus 0, but still out of scale from our existing 120-foot in the current ordinance. And height is still at their plans, 5 stories. With no changes, why reconsider it? It's the same suit, they've just added a tie. Number 2, traffic bottlenecks, pedestrian safety, and the pedestrian bridge are still unaddressed, with nothing in the ordinance to guide or govern their request to newly make everything by right. This plan is not ready for prime time. Thank you.
My name is Diane Day, and I live on Lowry's Lane. I'm not very articulate, so forgive me. But my concerns are when the houses that are now rented by the students will be occupied by, hopefully, other people for the people who own those properties. Now we have double the amount. Not only do we have the students living on campus, but we have that number of people still living in these rental positions. So to me, that immediately doubles up the traffic coming and going on Lowry's Lane and down Ithan and Lancaster and everywhere in these intersections. And not only that, but coming from South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is, we see this whole process going on there, and it has completely mushroomed to the point that, and because Notre Dame does have a lot of clout in South Bend, they not only have built the dorms and bulldozed so many areas, and I'm going to compare them to what would be Garrett Hill, so that they could, in addition to getting the dorms, have all these, storefronts and places like this for the students now. And not only that, but they have totally come in and redone all the traffic patterns in the area. And I'm just saying, like everyone is referring to, this would be this particular building going on now, but give it 5 years, and then this other kind of stuff would be happening. So I'm just saying be very careful what you're doing, because you're opening a can of worms here that's just going to explode, because there's a lot of properties that are questionable in the Garrett Hill area, like, oh, are they really good enough to keep, or do we just demolish them, and then what are we going to build in place of it? And it's going to happen more rapidly, and like I said, just by moving the students and putting other people in those homes, we've doubled the population, and that's something to please consider.
Thank you. Any other?
Hi, I'm Tony Bailey, and I live in Conestoga Village. One of the concerns that I have here is about the parking spaces. I know when we do development, there has to be a certain amount of impervious to pervious, and I'm concerned that when you create all these parking spots, like right now you have a parking lot. It's a big parking lot. Okay. That's already there. That's already covered. And so when you build the dormitory, you add additional height and, additional problems in terms of light pollution. You're going to have cars around there, that are pretty much going to sit there. Now the parking lot, that's pretty much an empty parking lot, after a certain time of day. But I'm just concerned, all the parking spots that are going to be created, will they abide by the regulation of our law to impervious versus impervious?
Well, why don't you answer that question?
We are showing less impervious coverage than what currently exists.
Less.
Tony, one of the other things that we haven't discussed at all is We currently can't do anything about stormwater on that parking lot, but with this new construction, we can address stormwater.
How would that be addressed?
Well, as part of their construction, they have to comply with our stormwater ordinances.
Is there a guarantee, though, that it will take care of the problem? Because it's been brought up before that things are going to be done.
I'm not suggesting, what I'm trying to convey to you is this gives us an opportunity to address stormwater, which we don't presently have. The outcome is going to depend on good engineering and the tenacity by this board and our advisory boards.
Well, again, I'm just concerned, this area of Radnor Township is already the densest in the entire township. This, to me, presents a bigger issue of more density, more cars, more pollution, more traffic. It just goes on. I am asking the board as tonight to please table this until more information and a more shored up plan, one that we can actually look at and say, okay, I understand that. I think it's a little premature at this juncture to take this to planning. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Kevin Gary, Black Road. You had mentioned questions and comments. Can we actually address
Sure.
any questions
No,
to
address them to us, and then we'll get the
Okay.
answers. Okay.
I would urge the board to ask if in the last month Villanova has decided on a plan or a date on building the bridge. It was asked at the community meeting in November. There was no date given. I'm wondering if that has changed. I rise to urge you to table this motion. I think that while the proposal looks better, it still remains a flawed proposal. From building setbacks to height requirements to placement of the bookstore, which I think they still are planning on putting on the corner of Bython Avenue, I would ask it still to remain on main campus. My bigger concern is that we have a planning commission that is undergoing a massive task currently, and that is to truly set the precedent for all institutions, not one and above. And if you do send this on to the planning commission, which unfortunately I fear you might, that you do so with express language to say finish your job on full planned institutional zoning before taking this up. Thank you.
Okay. As far as referring this to the planning commission, that's our incubator. Nothing's been decided. That's where we go and public comes out and we have give and take and they look at all the problems and make improvements. And everybody gives and takes. When the planning commission is done, when it comes back here, the commissioners are not going to approve any plan that doesn't have a timetable for the bridge. So, that will be discussed at the planning commission. It will be discussed at length with the commissioners when the bridge will be built. And we're not going to approve any project that doesn't have a timetable acceptable to the commissioners and the neighbors of when the bridge will be built. Do you want to address the net parking, what we have now, and what this proposal? How many parking spots we're gaining or losing? Or
Also, would you address the concern expressed about the traffic study and as to whether the traffic study could be done such that it's available to the groups?
Right. Yeah, on the traffic study, we're working with Gilmore and Amy right now on the scope of the study, and is Amy there? I'm sorry. No, I think we're looking at a number of intersections they want us to study, 19 intersections they want us to study on it, and so we're in the process of doing that as we speak.
When will that information be available for a township board or commission to?
Commissioner Curley, the scope of the traffic impact study has been determined. We've provided that through Amy Kaminsky some time ago to Villanova, so now it's in their hands. All right, so they're still getting their counts. As a matter of fact, we spoke of peak counts. I literally just had a discussion with Mary Lou. So one of the events going to be done, it's a St. Joe's Villanova game next week on a 7 o'clock game. So they do have the requirements of the traffic impact study. It is now up to Villanova to obtain all the data to go back to our traffic engineer for interpretation.
So can Villanova get that to our planning commission such that our planning commission can have that when they...
Yeah, Bob's telling me it'll be about a month.
Very good. Thank you.
Parking spots?
Parking spots. Currently on the site this includes both the Pike lot and the main lot, is 1,703. spread out through campus, we will be adding, as a result of this, 113 additional parking spaces. Now, they won't be on Lancaster Avenue. As we said, we're showing different levels, both on existing structures on campus as well as that surface parking that we're showing on down West Lancaster Avenue.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment or question?
Good afternoon. Randy Maud, 13 Aldwin Lane. I think I have two questions. One is the continuing focus on only one structure, at the church. While the drawings and renderings are beautiful, the issue at Lancaster and Ithan is a significant one. The foot traffic that goes across there will be increased and probably at least doubled, is my guess, even if we accept the arguments made by the university that most people would prefer to go to the church direction. The other item that I want to raise is that, to the best of my knowledge, the area where they're showing their new surface parking is residential property. And this may become then a pattern by which the university effectively annexes use of residential property onto an institutional usage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Commissioner comment?
Well, I'd like to make this is not a substantive comment, this is a procedural comment, so I believe I can make this without, regardless of my conflict. And it is just, tonight we heard a few times about this concern about these parallel processes going on with our Planning Commission already considering institutional zoning amendments. I've made this point before, and I still really maintain that this discussion and this consideration of this particular zoning amendment should be considered in conjunction with that work, and that if this board chooses to send this to our planning and our comp plan committee, the direction should be expressed that consideration of this proposed amendment should be in conjunction with that which is already in front of them in the institutional zoning amendments that they're considering, and that the aspects of both should be reconciled. Because in my opinion, it is ill-advised and illogical to have different zoning restrictions on different particular institutions. When we make institutional zoning amendments, they should apply to all of the institutions. So my feeling is that if this gets sent to our boards who are already considering this precise issue, this zoning amendment should be considered in conjunction with those changes that are already in front of them.
And the board over the years has constantly set up special zoning districts. When we did Pembroke East, we were worried a Target was going to move in there. So we set up a special zoning district. It doesn't apply anywhere else. Well, it's transportation that might apply to a couple other pieces when we did the Wayne Business District. So, I think that we can do both of these in tandem.
So I'm just going to, I don't mean to parse words, but this isn't a special zoning district, correct? This would apply to anyone in any PI that met the criteria.
Yeah,
I don't.
But the criteria is.
I think that this is not a special zoning district for Villanova.
Yeah, and they would have to meet the criteria. And also, this has been before the Planning Commission even started to consider the new institutional ordinance, which I may add is probably our current ordinance is probably the most restrictive for institutions in the state, at least that I've seen. There may be one out there that's more restrictive. I'm not aware of it.
Do we know the timing? This would be for Kevin or Steve. Do we know the timing regarding the information on our PI zoning that we've asked for?
The Planning Commission meets on a monthly basis separate from the regular Planning Commission meeting to address specifically the PI. Unfortunately, in November, we did not have a meeting because of Hurricane Sandy. So I don't have a good feel as to where we're at, but it's going to be another couple months as we're going through that process.
Is that timing, does that present a problem to Villanova? Does it present a problem to our Planning Commission if we were to follow Elaine's suggestion?
Let me just, we wouldn't be here making this presentation if we complied with the current zoning requirements.
Yes, I understand that.
The Planning Commission, you heard a comment earlier about the expert hired by the township somehow being in Villanova's, pro-Villanova. You have to remember, we have a very restrictive zoning ordinance as it is. He came in from what I never met the man. He's never spoken to Villanova about any of these projects. He came in, made suggestions that were quickly shot down that loosened the zoning regarding height and things of that nature. As I said, we wouldn't be here if we complied with current zoning. We're not going to comply with current zoning that's being proposed under the new ordinance, no matter what we do on this site. That is why we're asking for this amendment to the ordinance that would be applicable if certain conditions are met to other institutions as well, if they met the conditions in the ordinance. Running them in conjunction really serves no purpose because we're not going to meet the requirements, particularly seeing the way the Planning Commission is going with their comments. This site will not be meeting those requirements. They currently don't meet it. They're not going to meet it in the future either.
Where will you be not meeting it? What, out of compliance on what, height?
Setbacks, mainly setbacks. The professional offered some credit for height. That is still on the table, I believe. There's talk about it. Nothing's been definitive yet, but there's talk about if you're so far from residential property lines, you get some sort of increase in height. You get some credits for green and things of that nature, there may be some increase in heights. But right now, our requirement is 38 feet.
Yeah, that document is a public document, correct?
Yes.
So, very good.
But again, it's going back and forth. There's no final version of that right now. He's presented comments. The neighbors have stood up and made comments. The Planning Commission have made comments. So there's no real final written version or anything, as far as I know, close to a written version as of this point.
Well, I motion that we refer this, refer the zoning amendment to the Planning Commission, the Township Implementation Committee, and the Delaware County Planning Commission.
That was second?
Second, but you mean the comprehensive plan
Yeah, what did I say?
implementation Township.
Okay, the Township Planning Commission, the Township
No,
Comprehensive
comprehensive plan implementing committee.
Yeah, that was my second one.
Yeah.
And the Delaware County Planning Commission.
Right. I second that.
And I'm confident that the Planning Commission, in reviewing their institutional district and reviewing this at the same time, will be very helpful in coming up with their end product with this and also with their institutional district.
Yes, I share that, and I think there's going to be an element of this happening in parallel.
I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, 5-0, with one abstention. Personnel Administration.
We have before us a memo from John Rice incorporating, or his effort to incorporate some of the feedback we provided to him in our last discussion of the charter recommendation. Bill, the solicitor, is there anything you want from us? Are you just asking us to comment whether it's adequate? I'm not clear exactly. It says discussion of charter recommendations. I personally was satisfied with what I read. I don't know what more you're looking for from us.
John Rice's plan was to have you okay at the language tonight so that he could then actually present it formally to you at your next meeting and start the process of adoption. I know there was some discussion late today and some phone calls regarding possibly breaking up the ordinance into 4 separate ordinances. One would cover Articles 1, 2, 5, and 6, which are administrative provisions, and would include the vacancy board provision. The second would be Article 4, which would include the treasurer revisions. The third would be Article 7, which would be the budget revisions. And the fourth and last would be Article 7, which would include the contract revisions regarding bid limits.
Well, I'm
fine with that suggestion as well.
So, and my sense is that that's a good suggestion, and we should follow it, both giving us the opportunity to vote against something that we would not like, and then also the public the opportunity pick and choose.
And it also will it'll be much easier to educate people on the issues rather than lumping everything together.
So I
Any
guess.
other
No
commissioner
motion
comment?
required.
I don't know exactly, do we want to
What
make
does
a
John
motion,
want-
or we just
John
want to
want
give
from
him a
us? Do you
sense
want
of
a
the board
motion,
that this
sense
is
of the board, or-
acceptable?
John just needs a sense of the board that, as far as what you've seen so far, you're okay with the proposed language so that when it's presented formally, that process, the adoption process can start.
And
Can I have a
Jim,
motion to
Can
that
I
effect?
do have one question about the language of the surcharge. And that was under D1, the very first sentence stating that the treasurer shall surcharge any elected or appointed official for the amount of any loss to the township caused by blah, 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 blah. So my one concern about that, when you say shall, if we have a treasurer who, for whatever reason, does not surcharge in a situation where this occurs because of his or her preference, or because he or she didn't realize it, is the treasurer then liable since he's got this affirmative duty here?
Well, the treasurer could be, if someone so someone so wanted or desired, they could bring what's called a mandamus action against the treasurer to say the treasurer had this obligation or duty under the
So
home
this is
rule
a
charter.
duty then? I mean, we're creating an affirmative duty here.
Right, but it would, if for whatever reason exercising discretion, or if the treasurer thought that what happened didn't rise to the level of a surcharge, and someone disagreed with that, their remedy would be to bring a mandamus action against the treasurer to ask the court to order the treasurer to perform that duty.
Yeah, but mandamus doesn't apply where the officer has a discretion. It's purely a ministerial act.
Well, I'm saying if the word shall.
Right, so that's my question. This is taking discretion out of it. Am I reading that correctly?
It's taking the discretion out of it if, there's still discretion in determining whether an act has occurred which requires a surcharge. I mean, that is always going to be.
Right.
That's a decision that has to be made by the treasurer before instituting a surcharge action. So there is.
He has the discretion, even though it says shall, he can say, no, this doesn't rise to that, and I don't have to, and then someone can take an action against him to make him do it.
They could try to.
Yeah, but we couldn't get to first base on that. If it's a discretionary act, it's basic. You know as well as I do, mandamus lies only where the act is ministerial in nature.
Duty, right.
If somebody has the discretion to go one way or the other, you can't force them to take the act.
Is that common to have shall and not may? The treasurer may surcharge, or treasurer shall surcharge? I don't remember what the other.
I believe in drafting this language, John looked at the First-Class Township Act and the
Right.
Second-Class Township Act and mirrored much of the
And it's
language
shall.
that's in those
Yes.
acts.
I mean, I did have this discussion with him. All that language is from the three texts that he identified. He also indicated there's a level of discretion. I didn't fully comprehend how I saw it the way you saw it. And then I interpreted that we don't have the authority to change that to may, or do we? Could we say the treasurer may surcharge?
This is a home rule charter, so you have the ability to change that to may, but I think John was recommending that it be shall, and that way it'd be consistent with the First-Class Township Code, the Second-Class Township Code, and if there was ever an issue legally, you could look at the case law interpreting those statutes to assist you in analyzing the action of the
And
treasurer.
if you had a disagreement with the treasurer, if it says may, then he doesn't have to do it. Shall, you can make the argument that he, had to do it. I like shall.
It becomes a duty.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm opposed to the whole idea. But,
Yeah, no,
but
I
if you're
understand.
going to use the right language, the right word is shall.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Solicitor, I am sure that if we didn't have this surcharge provision, that the Township of Radnor or the County of Delaware or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would have remedies to take action against the elected official or appointed official who has caused the loss to the township. Having the treasurer vested with this authority doesn't mean that that's the only remedy. The township and the sovereign, the state and the county have remedies as well.
Well, Jim, you and I both agree that, we don't need a treasurer and all, but if we're going to have one, then he ought to have this duty to perform. If that's what the public wants, if the public, wants a treasurer, then he ought to have the ability to do something.
I'm making the point that, and our solicitor can correct me, that this is unnecessary. There's plenary authority in our statutes and our rules that give the Commonwealth and the county and ourselves the power to recover money where it's been misspent.
Well, we have the surcharge provision in there, and being a practical guy, if you take that out, it's going to be alarm to the public, and we can spend our whole lifetime to explain that. That's the problem we have, Jim, is that when you're going to the voters.
It's only been used once in 36 years.
I understand that, but the fact is that it was used once in a situation recently, and the public's aware of that, and they're going to want the treasurer to have this power. I mean, that's the practical aspect of it. So, because otherwise you'd have to put amendments saying you're doing away with the surcharge, which is in the charter now. And that's not, that's going to take all the attention. And
so am I correct that this is the entirety of the proposed provision in the charter respecting the office of the treasurer?
No,
this is my understanding, yes.
405 is what John prepared. This is the entirety of the provision in the charter.
Yes. I believe it. I can't really speak to that because
there's nothing there that we're not changing. It stays there.
No, I believe that that's correct. Jim.
Okay.
So what you said, A, B, and C are unchanged. D is modified as John Rice has indicated in this memo, and that's the entirety of the treasurer's duties.
And obviously, I don't have to tell the rest of the board what's absent from this is any indication of financial qualifications that this officer would have to show and possess before he or she could run for office.
Yeah, I went to the charter committee meeting when they discussed that and made just that point, but they didn't accept that position.
Well, but we run the charter committee. They don't run us.
Well, the charter committee is an independent citizens group that we look to for this.
No, but the issue is this is an elected position. The voters will make the decision on the qualifications. I mean, the commissioners don't have any qualifications of financial understanding,
You're right.
We take exception to that.
That was demonstrated very well for a while there.
Yeah, that was good.
So,
well, I'm going to move that we amend this to require that this office have, any candidate for this office have as a minimum a bachelor's degree in finance or accounting. They don't have to have a CPA license, but they have to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution in accounting or finance. That's my motion.
is there a second to that motion? Hearing no second, motion fails. All right. Does any public have any comment? All right. The sense of the board, all in favor of the sense of the board as stated this evening?
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
Aye? Okay.
I'm opposed.
And he's opposed.
Thank you.
Why not opposed? All right. Next we have Parks and Recreation.
There's no report, however, I do want to mention that this weekend on Sunday we have Holiday at the Willows. And for folks who have never been there, it's a fantastic time. Kevin, make sure to bring your kids down. They'll have a blast. But something special this year, in addition to the normal things, which is some entertainment, music, face painting. There was a juggler last year. I don't know, the juggler's booked again this year. And Santa, of course, they're going to end it with fireworks. That'll start at 5 o'clock or dusk. And that'll be the language the Parks and Rec folks are using is looking to blast into the holidays. So it sounds like a lot of fun, and I encourage everybody to go.
Fireworks at 5 o'clock.
Fireworks at 5, the event starts at 2.
Okay, good. Public safety?
Report, unless Superintendent Calarula has anything. No.
Library?
No report.
Public health, no report. Old business? New business? Public participation? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I wanted to ask, the Agnes Irwin rental of the Memorial Field apparently has resulted in permanent field markings. And I wanted to ask the board if the lease provided for permanent markings on what was a natural field. Have they exceeded their lease?
No, the Radnor sports teams use the same permanent markings. That's what the use of the field is. It went from a natural field where to a sports field with artificial turf, and the natural markings are a natural outset of that and totally acceptable. We have no problem.
I think it would be
We were told that it would be it would kind of revert to the public in the off-season.
Well, the public can walk on it and do whatever they want.
They
in the
walk,
off-season.
play Frisbee, do anything.
Yeah.
So, but, I think it's perfect. Bill, would you just bring this up with Bob and get a specific answer to that question? It wouldn't be hard to do, correct?
Sure.
But how can you have a sports field without permanent markings?
Yeah.
Real briefly,
I know what it's
the markings that are on the field can be removed. So I'm not sure what the definition of permanent is.
Well, no, the
We can bring it
markings
up.
on a turf field are actually
Built in.
paint.
Paint.
Yeah. So
They could be
remove it.
painted over.
You
They
could
all.
spray paint.
Yeah, you could take care of it, but
Yeah,
they're
okay.
part of the
Yeah.
exactly what we anticipated when
All
we
right, Jim, fine.
agreed with that
I don't see a
field.
problem, but we'll check it out.
We'll double check.
Thanks.
with
Thank
the-
you.
the agreement.
It's a beautiful field.
All right. Thank you. Okay, I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Move we adjourn.
Move. John, you're seconding? All those in favor? Aye. Pass 6-0. Thank you all.